Hello, hello, hello. Look at this. You don't even know right now that I have not been able to talk for the past 3 weeks. I got a cold, and it completely kicked my butt. And then just nasally, it crammed up everything. So I've been talking like this, and then because there's been smoke, constant wildfire smoke in Seattle, it turned into bronchitis. And all I want to do is make a video, but finally I can talk. So, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Both in real life and in filmmaking, there's this thing that I kind of call like passive action, and it's just where that's probably a bad word for it, but it's where things are happening but nothing's really changing. Like if you're sitting at the beach and the clouds are moving overhead and the waves are crashing up on the shore, or like trees are blowing or grass blowing in the wind, distant traffic heading over a hill, where you're just looking at it and it's just happening, but it's adding life to stuff. It's really obvious usually for outdoors. For indoors, it can be a little trickier because everything is more controlled. But especially in a sci-fi environment, I like being able to, little readouts on a screen, or little blinking lights are a really good one, especially with like photo scans and things like that, where you just get a bunch of static, dead machinery. Having a few little blinking lights in there adds so much life to the whole deal. In fact, the thing I like doing most is having it a little bit out of focus. So instead of just like a single point, it gets larger and it turns into like this little blinking textural bokeh in the background. My friend Lux is building a bunch of physical props right now for the upcoming shoot, and he's putting some actual little blinking lights on there, specifically just because we know the prop won't be getting some like a lot of up close screen time, but we can have it in the background or in somebody's pocket, just kind of like adding a little bit of motion to the shot in a way that we think will be cool. So what I want to do today is just make a tool. I want to make a blinking light once so that we can just use whenever we want to. We're going to add it to the asset browser. I'm going to be releasing, I already made a video when I had a cold, and it's a little stuffed up, but I'll be uploading that soon about how to use the asset browser if you've never dove into that. But yeah, that's the plan. Let's try to make a blinking light here. So gonna make a cube, 0.1, 0.3, just, this is still much larger than like a typical LED, but this will just be a good starting size. I'm gonna call it blinking light, and here, let's move this up, and we're gonna make a new material and call it blinking light. So it used to be, this is one of those things where I've created blinking lights before, and I always use some emissive material, and I add some keyframes, and turn on keyframe, turn off keyframe, turn off, and then I'll loop it, and it's a pain in the butt. And I don't know, I want to try to do it a little bit more flexibly and maybe clever. So this is going to be an emissive material here, same as always. We'll just start with it being a nice orange light. Let's go into Eevee. Go to rendered, and because it's always nice, let's check bloom. We'll slide open the shader editor here, and now here we go. We've got our emissive shader going into the surface output. This one's going to be a little bit down to basics. I think it's stuff I've kind of covered a lot in the past, just kind of different ways of working with shader nodes. But I always enjoy that, and I'm kind of trying to get back into the swing of things a little bit. So it's what we're doing. So first, let's create a value here, and if we plug this into the strength, we can set this to be whatever we want. I'm gonna hit pound frame here, which means the value here is whatever frame we happen to be on. So if I go to the right like 5 frames, you'll see now this also changes, which means if we hit play, this will just keep getting brighter and brighter for eternity, which is pretty cool. And basically everything we're going to be doing today is between this value output and this strength input here. So right now, on frame 1, it's a value of 1, 2, 3. That's getting bright way too fast. So here, let's divide it using a math node, and this is easy. It's just changing this to divide. I'm going to divide it by 24, which means on frame 1, it's now 1/24th of 1, and it isn't until frame 24, when we're a second in, that this actually reaches a proper value of 1. And I know you get it, but I want to introduce the idea of kind of thinking of it in terms of a graph here, because I think that's going to help us later. So what we've done is we've changed from going like this, on frame 1, it is 1 brightness, to every frame, it now only goes up 1/24th, and it isn't until, 24 frames later that we reach that same point. That said, to make this graph easier, instead of frames, I'm going to turn this into seconds, which means the graph would once again look like this because we're dividing it by 24. But I don't want my light to just keep getting brighter and brighter forever. I want it to blink. I want it to reach this point and then go back down and blink again. And there's a really easy way of doing that. So right now this is, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, blah, 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 blah. Then it reaches this point and it's 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then it's 2.1, 2. if we use, here, I'm going to duplicate this math node and use a fraction, it ignores everything ahead of the decimal point. So it goes, 0.9, instead of going to 1, it goes back to 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. And if we hit play, just from doing that, every second now, it's going to do a blink, which is exactly what we want. And because I'm trying to make a tool, I want to give it a couple inputs that let you easily tweak and kind of randomize and dial in the settings. So, and here, we're going to actually name these. I'm going to go the looper, cool. And this one, let's call slowed to a second. Now here, I'm going to pull this over, duplicate this math node, change it to multiply, and let's rename it. These names aren't doing anything. They're just for, our benefit. Blinks per second. If we multiply it by 1, we're not changing anything. This is still, 1 blink per second. But if we make this 2, every number here is twice as large, and so it goes up twice as fast, and it reaches 1 and begins its loop all over again. And likewise, if we change this to 3, it'll be doing it, 3 times as fast. And I like this input here, so I'm going to turn all of this stuff here into a group, Control G, and we can tab in and out of it. So now we just have this group. Let's see, can I name it? I always forget where they hide this. Properties, blinking light. Great. Okay. Now if we tab into that, you'll notice it gives us this input here. And if we drag our blinks per second value into that, when we tab out, we can now control the blinks per second with this little slider. Here, while we're in here, let's go to the group settings, and I'm going to change value to blinks per second. There we go. And here, let's make this 2. That's a good number of blinks per second. So right now you can see it's getting brighter and then going. That's a weird kind of sawtooth action. We want it to either just be on or off. So we're going to use another math node. Love math nodes, and we're going to use the greater than. Where is it? There we go. And we get to pick a value here. I'm going to put 0.5. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the input, and if it's greater than 0.5, it's going to output 1, and if it's less than 0.5, it's going to output 0. So right here, it would just be doing 0 until this point reaches 0.5, and then it goes all the way up to 1, which is exactly the kind of more square wave thing we want from our light. Look at that! And I could rename this to be blink duration, but then there's something kind of weird, which is that the higher this is, like if we do 0.9, the light will only turn on when the value is over 0.9. And the fact that you turn up this number and you actually get the light off for most of the time is kind of weird. So I'm going to change this to less than instead. So now when you slide up the duration, that's actually the percentage, 90% of the time that the light is on. I'm going to drag this over to the input also. Change that to duration percentage. And here, let's drag color down here too, so we can make it whatever we want. Okay, but let's say we have a lot of these lights in the scene, and we don't want them all blinking, in sync. Well, if you've done some node stuff, you are probably aware of, let's see, object info, the random input, which is going to give you a random value between 0 and 1. And let's see, if we just add that to our slowed down speed here, connect that here. Look at that, they're all randomized. And the reason for that, remember, this is just a value it keeps going up forever. By adding a random value like 0.5 to it, we're creating another variation that starts right here and goes up, except then when it hits up here, it starts down here. So each line's randomized starting point means that it will reach the loop point at a different point in the cycle from everybody else. And all the lights are randomized. One thing I did recently is I wanted there to be a bunch of lights, but have them kind of in sync, as if they're kind of just washing through in a wave. I wanted to be kind of like waves on the ocean type deal. And a way to do that is, instead of using the full random value, here, let's rename this one to adding randomization. And we're going to duplicate this, and let's just change this one to multiply. Rename it to amount randomization. And here, let's make that 1. And you can see right here we're at full randomization, but if I change this to 0, it's fully in sync again. If I change this to 0.1, it's only offset by 1/10 of the blink maximum. And that's because by multiplying it by 0.1, we're not adding a value between 0 and 1, we're just adding a value between 0 and 0.1, which means all the lines are still going to be randomized a little bit, but they're all centered around just right here as opposed to the entire space. So I will drag this into the group input also, change it to amount randomization. And let's do one more thing here at the end. Remember, the greater than less than just gives us this square wave of like 0 straight up to 1 down to 0. What if we want a light that's brighter than 1? We can just create a math node here, multiply, and just whatever we put in here will be the brightness, because we're multiplying 1 by 5 will have a value of 5, and we can drag that over into the input also, brightness. And this is pretty cool, but there's still some things that bug me. Like, the light bulbs don't turn straight black when they turn off. There should still be, the ambient light from the room lighting it up. And so let's use an add shader here. And we're going to add the values of our emissive shader with just whatever happens to be there. Here, let's add a glossy shader here. And you can make this be whatever you wanted, but now, it'll add those values to the emission, so it's still doing something even when the light isn't on. That helps a lot for me. And my instinct here is to keep going. Just randomize. We could randomize the colors. We could randomize the speed that all the different lights are blinking. We could actually, I guess that would be a good last thing to do, so they're not all blinking at the exact same speed. And I think we could do that pretty easily here, because we can do it basically exactly the same way we did the amount of randomization here, by multiplying the random by some other value to give us an amount that we want to multiply against the total thing. So here's the blinks per second. Before the blinks per second input gets into that value, let's multiply it by the random input here. And now if you look at any individual light, it'll be blinking at a different speed from all of its neighbors. And the reason for that is because now, instead of just adding an offset into the line vertically, we're also changing the angle of the line. So instead of just always going up like this, some of them are being multiplied by 0.5, going like this, or 0.1, and we're getting every different type of variation there, bounded by the total number of blinks per second input right here. So let's rename this variation in blinks per second. But of course, if we don't want to have any variation in the blinks per second, that is as easy to do as here. Let's duplicate this, and we'll rename this to BPS variation, and we'll multiply this by 1. It means it'll be unchanged. Here, let's drag this down. Hello, it's Ian from the edit. Did your brain just turn off because I said amount of randomization one too many times? Because mine just did editing this, and so I just want to say, don't worry. You're not confused as much as it's just me being boring, and it's over in like 30 seconds. So here we go. And as always, we're going to go in here and we can name this BPS variation. But something interesting happens when we tab out and we change the variation to 0. And that is nothing. All the blinking stops. Why is that? It's because multiplying anything by 0 just will always give you 0. So if we go in here and look at this, changing this, looking at this is 0 multiplied by this random value means this is 0 multiplied by the other the other value is 0. It's 0. 0 is going to propagate all the way through. Nothing's going to change, and we can bypass all of that by using an add node here and just adding 1 to this, which means now instead of multiplying by 0, it's multiplying this value by 1, which means that value is just unchanged. So if we go back here and make the variation 0, here, and let's turn the amount of randomization up to 1. Yeah, there we go. Okay, variation is 0 is still working. We turn it up to 1. All the different durations are now long. You'll notice it speeds things up, which means the blinks per second is a little bit invalidated. Like, it is changing the variation, but at the cost of now they're all kind of moving faster. And we could probably figure out how to loop this value into the blinks per second so they kind of like self-normalize or whatever. But instead, it's easy enough to just slow this back down, and there we go. We've got all of our nice little sci-fi lights. This is as much as I want, really. And again, we could try to do some kind of clever stuff to randomize the colors, but honestly, usually I don't want that much randomization in the light color because it starts to look like kind of a clown rave disco party really fast. So what I'd probably do is I would just duplicate the cube and create a new instance of this material and call it like blue light. And now I can change this without it affecting anything else, and we have our new blue lights. And that's all well and fine, except I've been working on this scene with Josh in space. It's almost done. While I was sick, I would just kind of like plant myself in front of the computer. I kept wanting to just like sit and watch James Bond, but I figured if I just like aim myself at a computer, I would get things done. So yeah, this episode is fantastically close to being done. But I made a couple cutaways, including a few cutaways of kind of hands doing control levers and stuff. The hand itself doesn't look great, which is why I mostly have it out of the shot, but I enjoy all the rest of this. But you see this light right here. I really wanted to capture that feeling of an old school kind of like a incandescent bulb in a plastic case, and I think I was able to capture that pretty good, and it was really easy to do. So let's push this one step further and see if we can kind of create a little plastic case like this. And this is a thing I found. It's one of the things that I figured out a long time ago, but I'm always fighting it, which is that especially when it comes to lights, you get out what you put in. My instinct is always, oh, it's a light. I'm just gonna have an emissive white orb or something like that with a car headlight. But if you actually take the time to like put a bulb inside of a casing or something, you're gonna get all of these interesting kind of refractions and stuff in a way that probably confuse the path tracer. But I'll link to the video about optimizing path tracers below, just because I think that's probably one of the most useful videos I've ever put up here. But yeah, especially if you're not trying to use it as a major light source in the scene, putting stuff in front, it always looks cool. So let's do it. Oh, but first let's make it an asset. Here I'm going to invert my selection, delete everything except for the original light here. And I'm just going to right click and say mark as asset, and I'm going to save this file in my designated asset browser folder here, blinking light. And again, if that's new to you, watch the video I'm putting up in, like, I don't know, probably tomorrow, and I'll be going all through the asset browser. And here, let's go into the asset browser real quick, and I'm going to create a new category called blinking lights, because I think I'll probably be having a lot of those types of things in the future. I should just call this like passive action stuff, and gonna drag this into blinking light. All right, there we go. Now every time I open Blender, I can just drag this into the scene, and I'll have another little blinking light doing its own thing. That's really fun. But okay, here let's duplicate this. You'll notice the duplicate is not an asset, so we're just starting clean. I'm gonna scale this down. This is gonna be the back. This is gonna be the inside of the button, the actual like LED incandescent whatever light element. Around it here, Shift S, cursor to selected. So when we create a cube, it's centered right around there. Gonna scale it down so it kind of wraps that whole thing a little bit. Move it forwards. Gonna create a new material, and this will be called plastic casing, and we're gonna assign that to this cube here. And basically just trying to actually model what a plastic casing would look like. We're gonna, it's just we were gonna get out of it what we put in. So here, let's select this face here, delete. I'm gonna select all of the plastic casing and hit Alt E, extrude along normals to give it all some depth, because things in real life have depth. And here, let's go into solid view here. Control R to add an edge loop, Control B to bevel it, and we're just gonna separate it like that. And if I scroll up, I get all of these extra lines here. I'm gonna use that, and then we're gonna add an edge loop here, and like I guess an edge loop there. And what I want to do is just select all of these different ridges inside without selecting the entire loop. So I'm going to, let's see, what's the best way to do this? I'm gonna select this, hit H to hide it. Gonna go into C selection. I'm gonna go into face selection mode, select all of these, select all of these, make sure I don't have anything inside selected. Great. Hide that. Okay, cool. And now we're only selecting these inner bits here. Gonna alt click on all of these different loops. Dun, dun, dun. Hopefully I picked an odd number, an even number. I can't remember, so I always just have an extra one left over. But we lucked out. Okay, that's great. Gonna go into vertex selection mode and deselect these ones here. Hopefully. In fact, let's go one layer further there. And if we hit Alt S, we'll move them along their direction. And so now we just kind of have this ridged interior like this. That's actually probably too much. Cool. Here, I'm gonna unhide everything, and we can bevel this a little bit. Just grab all of these corners and front bits. Control B bevel. Here, turn that down a little bit. I just want to give it a little. Yeah. That's looking good. And for plastic casing, here, let's just create a translucent shader and a glossy shader here. And if we just mix those together, what does this look like just right off the bat? Oh, here, I do want to go into cycles because we're doing some crazy path tracing stuff. Ooh, that's already got a cool inner glow. Here, instead of translucent, let's try just glass. We're going to turn up the roughness a little bit. And, ooh, yeah, that looks good. Here, we can kind of see the this orange square in there, so just add a little bit more of an interesting look. Let's scale it down and maybe do something kind of like this. And just because we can, here, let's create a cube and just kind of give it a little holder too. With a new material, and this will just be, black plastic or whatever. Make this dark, and we won't even really tweak anything else. Assign it to that selected geometry. And here, if we put it in a little bit of an environment, what's it do with like a light source? Okay, I'm gonna change this more to the glass and probably turn down the roughness of the glossy too, just to give it a little bit of that kind of like specular look. Yeah, but that's fine for like a little background light, and it's still blinking in there. And what I think would be kind of cool here, let's turn that off, is if use this on like a VCR or something like that. And actually, here, let's go into blinking light and just turn duration up to 1. Now all the lights are just constantly on. if I scale down this square, rotate 90 degrees, and put it right inside the plastic here. Yeah, and do it again here, but this one we will scale down. You know what we're doing. We're making a VCR. Here, let me grab that. And let's see, if we bring this over and just tab in, go to vertex selection mode and hit Control-Shift-B, scroll up, there we go. We've got our circle. And yeah, that's nifty. And this didn't take all that long, but like for the past 20 years, all I've ever been doing with light sources is making little perfect glowing rectangles. And this just adds so much more texture. And now, while I'm still here, remember this is all one object, so I can just call this blinking light encase, or encasing, I think, otherwise it sounds like a contingency measure. But right click, mark as asset, go to, oh, come on, asset browser here, unassigned blinking light encase, drag that into our blinking lights, and now every time we open Blender, we can just drag this into the scene, change the color to whatever we want. I love it. And I was recording the whole time. Oh yeah, that's very fun. Actually, I'm gonna upload this as an asset, or you can download this in the description too, just because it's really fun. Okay, well, got a lot more videos coming your way now that I can talk again. Feels very good. You guys have a great one. Thanks for hanging out.